Welcome to another episode of the Lost Loverboy Podcast. I am your host, as always, Demetri Wiley, and it is a pleasure to be back with you guys. I don't know if you guys seen the last episode, but Jasmine came on here and spewed her heart out. She gave us pieces of herself that, she told me she never shared with the world before. She never opened up about her relationships, and I appreciate you guys for making this such a welcoming space. There was a few negative comments, but I'm gonna just assume you're new here and you don't understand that this is a safe space. But if you have not heard, please check the viewer discretion. Do I need to do it again? Viewer discretion is advised for this Love Thing podcast. Hey, listen. I ain't even gonna get into that because you should have heard it before you got here. Today is a good day. I want to have more guests on, very similar to Jasmine, who can share their experiences and help us learn from it. I want to have more guests on, very similar to myself, influencers who live in this space. I want to have therapists. I want to have, everyday people. I want to have just a barrage of guests who feel comfortable enough to sit and have a conversation with me. And maybe you. We'll see. But today, like I said, today's a good day. I'm feeling very good. I want to dive into one of my favorite ideas when it comes to human relations. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm super big on psychology, right? Studied in the school, all of those things. And I think that's what makes me good with human relation. That's why I'm able to understand love to an immense degree that not a lot of men can. And I appreciate you guys for noticing the rarity in me, but I love to share my tips and tricks of what I've learned. And even in the comment section, if you have others that, are very relative to the subject matter, please drop it in the comment section. One of my love languages is to teach and learn. Baby, drop it down in the comment section, like, subscribe, all those beautiful things. But today, I want to talk about the art of detachment. I want to talk about what it is. I want to talk about why I want to talk about why it's absolutely necessary for the space that we're living in. Excuse me. Why it's absolutely necessary for this space and this generation and this time period that we're living in, because detachment can be found in almost every relationship, whether it's parental, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a heartbreak, whether it's boss to worker, employment based, whether it's goals or aspirations or expectations, it's everywhere. And the thing about it is, a lot of people hear the word and hear negative connotation. But I want to assure you, detachment does not mean emotionally unavailable. Detached does not mean robotic. Detachment does not mean you don't have feelings there or emotions there. That's not what it means. I'll explain it to you. A lot of times in life, we become emotionally hijacked by things that we are accustomed to. You want so badly to make this certain amount of money that you feel like your confidence is attached to it. You want so badly to be in a healthy relationship that you feel like your acceptance or validation or satisfaction is attached to it. You want to not be alone so bad that you cling to people who may or may not be good for you. And as humans, we all do it. I've done it before. I was in a relationship where I felt like all of my goals, dreams, heart's desires lied in this person. And the beauty of it is, when I was able to step back, I realized it wasn't the person I was attaching myself to. It wasn't the person I had to detach from. It was actually what I wanted of the person. It was what I wanted for myself. And once we're able to, look at these relationships and say, damn, excuse me, I'm trying not to swear. I don't know if y'all know this, but little side note, I've been reading the Bible lately. I'm super happy and super pleased that I've dove into it. But one of my biggest things I told myself, I want to learn to not swear. And I don't need to. Obviously, I have a vast vocabulary, but it's always been an extra season. So I'm working on doing my best, because one day I want more children, and I don't want my children feeling like it's a vocabulary they had to take on because their father passed it down and their mother passed it down. You are not a product of what you come from. You are a product of the work you put in, and that's the work I'm attempting to put in. But that's here nor there. Discord, I want to have Bible studies and things like that of that nature. And I know so many people said they was down for it, but that's just what I want to do. So back to the actual point. I looked up one day and I realized that I wasn't attached to the person. I was attached to everything I wanted of them. My confidence, my desires, my goals, my expectations, my wishes, my wants, they were all attached to this person. And the thing about it is, God Himself created you to be yourself. God put everything in you and made it enough, right? There was this cooking that He did, and every single ingredient that He put in you was enough. You do not have to search externally for it. You don't have to go find it in monetary value. You don't have to find it in other people. There's nothing anyone can add to you to make you you. You are already you, right? And I'm sitting and I'm looking at this book, right? This book right here. Let's see if I can actually find a page. I read these books, right? And I'm a man of highlighting. So I highlight things that I find important or relative or, necessary. And one of the things I've highlighted in this book was very profound by Will Smith. This is Will Smith's book. Very profound. And I found it very relative to myself. And I've never heard a man speak this way until I actually read this book. But he says, I look in Melanie's eyes the look in Melanie's eyes became the substitute for Gigi's approval, which is his grandmother. He said, I've always needed a woman to achieve for. When I performed, I was now performing for Melanie. When I started making money rapping, in my mind, I was making money for her. I bound my self-esteem to the sliding scale of her happiness. If she was happy, that meant I was a good person. If she was unhappy, that meant I was a monster. Now, I've never actually heard anybody speak on it the way Will Smith does in this book. But that external validation we seem to seek from our lover or our partner, or it shaped us. And it essentially told us who we were internally. That's being emotionally hijacked. And a lot of times we become emotionally hijacked by all these external things. And within that lives stress, conflict, anxiety, toxicity, and you're allowing all those things to determine your mood. If you get in an argument with your partner, your mood changes. If your partner's mood changes, your mood changes. If you're having a bad day at work and stressed out at work, your mood changes. If there's conflict, it creates an anxiety, and that anxiety allows your mood to change, right? It's natural human behavior, but the idea of detachment is saying whatever the conflict or stress or all of that is, it does not sway my mood. Detachment is the idea of stepping back in order to protect your mental health, your emotional health. It's taking yourself out of the situation. For example, you driving to work, somebody cut you off. It's two things you can do. You can allow your amygdala, which is a like almond-sized part of your brain, to lead with your emotions, right? If you watched Inside Out, they lived in Riley's amygdala, right? It's the thing that determines your emotions. The mood board that they were pressing buttons on, yeah, that's the part of your brain that's controlling your body, that's controlling your stress levels, your ability to decision make. It should not control you. And that's the biggest thing about it. In all actuality, your prefrontal cortex should actually, which is the part that you make logical decisions from, should actually lead in protecting your decision making, right? So if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you can let your amygdala lead, or you can do logical thinking and say, 2 seconds later, I'll never see this person again. Or you can get out the car, bust their windows out because you're angry, and you can go right to jail, right? Detachment is saying, I'm not going to let my amygdala lead. I'm going to lead with the logical part of my brain, and make a sound decision that protects everything I've worked for. You can get cut off in traffic, get out, bust their tires, end up in jail, lose your job because you lost your job. You can't pay your bills because you can't pay your bills. Now your kids' place to stay is up in jeopardy. You know, it's the idea that detachment is protection, and not a lot of people know that. Not a lot of people actually see that. You know what I'm saying? And understand, detachment is mastering the reaction and not suppressing the emotion. I'm not asking you to suppress your emotions. We obviously saw Inside Out when the emotions got locked up. I just love that movie, so I'm always referencing it. But when the emotions got locked up and put in the tube, the first thing Fear said, he was like, oh no, we're suppressed emotions. And that's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm not asking you to suppress your emotions. I'm asking you to allow your prefrontal cortex to actually make sound decisions for you, right? When I was heartbroken and going through everything I was going through, I realized that after I realized that it wasn't the person I was mourning, it was all our future plans, and it was keeping the family together, and it was all of my expectations that I had placed for my life, for her life, for whatever reason. That's what I was in mourn of. When you really step back, you really realize that guy you was dating, that man you was in a relationship, he really wasn't too much good to you anyway. Right? You may have just mourned the friendship y'all had, but you hated the relationship. You know, and the thing about it is a lot of people ask the question why. And that is the why. Overinvestment. We invest too much of ourselves into people. We look up and we say, well, I can't live without this person. That's not true. You later come to terms and realize that's just not true. It's not that you couldn't live without the person. You didn't know who you were when it was time to live without them. You didn't know who you'd become when you couldn't just pick up the phone and call them. Ask yourself this question. We trip so much about a person's communication. Even when we dating, we say, if you don't text back in this loud amount of time, then I don't want nothing to do with you. What does it change if they text you back fast or not? It is not an accurate gauge of their concern. It is not an accurate gauge of their care, so what does it matter? What it is your self-esteem is attached to it. We overly invest into other people, things that we should honestly keep whole. And I'm not saying that, perception doesn't matter, but perception should never be large enough to sway who you are. You have to have a self-confidence. There has to be a self-assurance that somebody just can't come in and walk off with. And a lot of times that overinvestment leads to these toxic cycles, and every relationship starts to feel the same. Every relationship starts to feel like the relationships your mother used to have, or your father used to have, or they used to have together. I'm not sure if it was a single parent or a dual household, but a lot of times we begin to emulate the same toxic relationships we grew up around. Your mother was so reliant on your father for her validation that you became reliant on a man for yours. We grow up being taught that women grow up being taught that when a man values you, they do this, they do X, Y, Z. So when you don't see X, Y, Z, they never explain what ABC should look like. You're just so in a frenzy that they're not doing X, Y, Z. Right? And that is what we need to detach from. A lot of people sit in these toxic relationships because it's like a reward system for them, right? You ever met somebody and was like, oh, I love a man who's gonna come over and bust out my tires and you know, who ain't gonna play about me, who gonna pull up and he gonna give me that energy I need, and he gonna grab me by my collar and, you know, put me in my place. There's a dopamine release that happens when from that level of toxicity. And a lot of people become addicted to it. But let's say you find a man who's gonna come over and rough you up and put you in your place and help you release that dopamine. What's not gonna happen is what now happens is you become numb to everything that feels healthy in a relationship. And now you're locked into these toxic cycles. You're stimulated by the idea of when a person cares about you, this is what it looks like. Social media has led us to believe that a man doesn't care if he's not buying you a bouquet of 12,000 roses. Like, baby, when did 12 not become good enough? A dozen was good enough a couple years ago. Now you want 12 dozens. Like, my goodness. Like, it's led you to believe that a man does not care if he ain't flying you out. Or a man does not care if y'all don't go to a certain caliber of restaurant. When, in all actuality, that's perception. That's you viewing a situation and internalizing it. You telling that man you don't want to go out for ice cream, but you love ice cream. But when it comes to this specific situation, you're too good for it. Make it make sense to me. I think the thing about it is the steps I want to touch on in terms of detachment. Number one, you have to be very, very, very cognitive and aware of what your triggers are. Right? If you suffer from some anxiety that always makes you feel like somebody cheating on you, that's never going to go away until you conquer it in yourself. I was cheated on, you know, but what I have to tell myself is not everyone's the same. The reason this person cheated had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with me at all. There was no amount of validation or reassurance I could have provided this person from doing what it is they wanted to do. They didn't care enough. If a person's value is monetary, there's no words you can give to soothe that. There's no connection y'all can have to soothe that. They're going to go where the dollar flows. It's just that simple. So you got to be very cognitive of your triggers. Like, every man who sits his phone face down on the table ain't cheating on you. Ain't lying to you. I do it all the time. But that's because I want to be present and aware. The moment my phone dings, I don't want to see it to be so thirsty to pick it up. That's just me personally. Every time a random number call your person's phone, they not cheating. That's not some stranger they forgot to lock in and save. You got to understand what your triggers are, because your triggers are going to lead into your anxiety, and your anxiety determines your mood. Your stress determines your mood. You know, so first you have to identify what your triggers are. A major trigger for me was anything that felt reminiscent to infidelity, right? So if you acting sneaky, and the thing about it is, listen to what I'm saying. If you're acting, what the fuck is acting? I'm sorry. What is acting sneaky? What does that mean? It's a perception-based thing. Anything can be sneaky if you view it that way. I can put my hood on and whisper this whole podcast. Y'all be like, he acting sneaky. But that's perception. You know? And a lot of times we got to escape that perception in order to rationalize how we feel internally. In order to make sense of how we feel internally. So first, you got to understand what your triggers are. Then you got to understand how to place boundaries, how to put boundaries in place to limit the amount of exposure you get to said triggers, right? If you know there's one person who bothers you every time they speak, you don't get in conversation with that person too much. Like my older brother, for example, back in the day, and this is not my older brother now, but back in the day, my older brother used to be the type of person to just argue to argue. I could be sitting there trying to teach him some vital information, and he'd be like, nah, I already know how that works. You ever met somebody who'd be like, I already know how that works. You don't know how that works. My older brother would always pick the B side of the CD because everybody else picked the A. He's a radical, extreme, go against the grainer. That was my older brother, right? And what I had to realize was I must stop going back and forth with this man. It's clearly unhealthy for me because I can present him facts. And he's still going to make his own opinions and spew it out his mouth. I can only limit the kind of conversations I get in. A long, long time ago, one of the things that my mother does not talk about two things with other people: politics and religion. She don't get into it. She's not going to get into it. There's nothing you can do to get her into it. That's her boundary. She put that in place for herself. You know, you have to find your boundaries that limit the amount of exposure you get to things that trigger you, that can sway your mood or emotionally hijack you. I can't say I don't. I try not to entertain racism. I try. I really do. That's a boundary for me. I really try not to entertain racism, but when it's extreme, I can't help it. God know my heart. You understand what I'm saying? I can't help it. I might have to slap somebody. That's just, hey, you never know to what degree it reaches, but, and part of creating those boundaries is releasing those unhealthy relationships. Me and my parents went without speaking for years. It was unhealthy. There was a lot of growth that needed to be done on their end and my end in order for the relationship to fall back into a healthy place. So you got to be willing to release those unhealthy relationships. Let that nigga go. Let him go. Let him go. He's clearly, if you take your emotions out of it, your expectations out of it and detach, you can't see that that man never cared about you to begin with. It'd be so many people in my DM, hey, Demetri, does a man care about you if? What does it mean if? That if tells you all you need to know. That if is your answer. If you doubt it, that's reality. It's just that simple. Let him go. Find relationships that build you up. This is a nice conversation clip going around where this woman asks, how do you deal with a man who's emotionally unavailable, but he provides? And my answer is you don't. Just because there's things that work does not mean the thing that does not work or your boundaries should not be crossed. You should not cross these boundaries for nobody. These are non-negotiable set to you. Your mind is perceiving the idea that there'll never be another man to pay for a bill. Men exist. There will. And I hate this narrative in man that makes it seem like you got to settle. You don't have to settle for anything. You don't have to settle for anything. And I'm not saying people are perfect, but there's a match for you. I'm not saying people are perfect, but there's somebody willing to give it effort and try for you. That's all that matters. Ain't nobody asking for you to be perfect. But I'm asking you, when you step back for your mental and emotional health and view the relationship from that lens, from a detached lens, I want you to view the relationship the same way you expect your friend to when you call her and tell her, hey girl, look what such and such did. View it how she would. Because that's somebody who's detached from the situation. Think about it like this. In parenting, we detach all the time. If you got a kid, right? When your kid come to you and they say, man, daddy, I dropped my cookie at lunch today and I wasn't able to, and they just randomly start rambling about how their day went. and it's the heaviest thing on their heart that they dropped that cookie at lunch. That's all they've been thinking about all day. You know what you don't do? You don't internalize it. You don't become their problem. You say, man, that's messed up. I'll get you another cookie. You rationalize, you problem solve. It's just that simple. You don't allow their bad day to become your bad day. So how come when you dating and your partner in a bad mood, you automatically jump in a bad mood? Tell me that. They had a bad day at work. They come home and they don't want to talk. Right? And now you mad, they don't want to talk. You got to stop allowing people to steal your mood from you, steal your joy from you. You understand what I'm saying? The thing about it is, what detachment does, detachment allows you to regulate your response. Before you react, pause a second and think to yourself, you in a relationship, y'all got into an argument, he said some sideways stuff out of his mouth. You see, I said stuff. I've never said stuff in my life. It feels really weird. He said some sideways stuff out of his mouth. And now you're viewing it. And before it hits you, you say, hold on a second. I understand he's only speaking this way because he hurt. I understand he shouldn't be speaking to me this way. I understand that I'm not going to internalize it. He ain't about to ruin my day. That's healthy detachment. Detachment allows you to pause for a second and come to a conclusion about the situation on your own. You get in a car accident, your whole day is ruined. Tell me that, because I've been there. I've been there. But the thing about it is, you look up and you say, life happens. You try your best not to allow it to sit on you and weigh on you and become a conflict you are now dealing with over time. Because anxiety keeps you up at night. I know it kept me up at night. I was so concerned about public perception. I want the world to see that I am who I say I am. Right? But one day I looked up and I said, I can't control that. Why is it keeping me up at night? This young lady put something on TikTok and it created so much negativity. I've spoken on it before. And what I realized was I'm not in control of how these people feel. My 60-second, let me get this off my chest video ain't gonna heal years of trauma. It ain't gonna make everybody like me. All I can do is be myself. The other day I read my Bible, right? And I'm very proud of myself. So proud I called my grandma right after. I said, Granny, I'm reading the Bible. She was like, what? I'm super proud of you. She was like, what chapter have you read? And I told her I was reading, how to manage the tongue and stop swearing and XYZ. And the first thing my granny did was threw me grace. She said, I want you to understand that God knows there's no malintention with the words you use. As much as I would love for you to stop, she was like, a lot of times we fall into human situations where we have to sin. She was like, sometimes I had to lie at work back in the day and say my boss wasn't around and he's sitting there in the office. This is the exact example she gave me. She was like, so give yourself grace in everything you're trying to learn. And I promise y'all, I'm so proud of myself. I'm proud of myself because I feel like it's something that my son will get to inhabit. It's a healthy thing that my son will get to embrace. The other day when I read the Bible, all my anxiety left. And let me take you to the chapter I was reading. Highlighted, as always. Here it says, the sobering truth is that the more you pray, the sobering truth is that the more you worry, the less you pray. But the more you pray, the less you worry. Now, this is Tony Evans' study Bible. And, I'm so glad that I have it. A lot of people sent me a lot of different things, like children's Bibles for Logan and a bunch of different things like prayer books to help me out in my studies, and I'm actually studying. You know what I'm saying? It says, don't worry about anything, but in everything, through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understandings, will guide your heart and minds in Jesus Christ. You know, it says you cannot dwell on both the things of God and the lies of Satan. So, you know, my thing about it was I needed something to help soothe my anxiety. So I prayed about it. And I promise y'all, I've been sleeping better because of it. I know once I do get in a relationship one day, there'll be so many people with so many negative things to say. Everybody gonna have a perspective. If she dark skinned, she ain't light enough. If she light skinned, she ain't dark enough. If she small, she ain't big enough. If she big, she ain't little enough. And they gonna say all these different things, but it's not on me to shape those narratives. I cannot allow these people to emotionally hijack me. You can't take my emotions and run with it. I gotta detach from the opinion of other people. And I've been learning that. And I'm so proud of myself for everything that's been going on. And that's why I wanted to share this art of detachment with you guys. Me moving on after heartbreak was not an easy thing to do. But the moment I realized it wasn't the woman I was missing, she actually didn't show me the love I had given. I didn't get that in return. It was how much she meant to my expectations. It was how much keeping a family unit meant to my expectations. And the moment I realized that, guys, I was over it. I never once looked back. And I'm able to take that into relationships and not project what it is that I desire and want and just view the person. Take control of your own life by detaching from things you cannot control. Removing your emotions off things that should not be swaying by them. It's a very hard thing to do, but I want you to understand that make judgment off that prefrontal cortex. You understand what I'm saying? Because as much as I love the movie Inside Out, your emotions are not the only thing that can control you. Your emotions are not the only thing that should control you. You are already the perfect recipe for the perfect meal, the perfect design, the perfect cake. You are already who you need to be. Right? There's the moment somebody up and walk away from you, you don't lose that special ingredient that makes you taste like you. You are already you. And you got this. You understand what I'm saying? So for everybody tuned in, watching on a daily basis, don't forget to subscribe. I love you. We got some guests coming on soon. I'm so excited. I want to get this Strictly for the Lovers R&B tour moving. We're going to do Atlanta, LA, Washington, DC, Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas, New York, Chicago. I'm going to try to do 2 in October so I can have 2 Halloween parties. Maybe Chicago and Atlanta, but we'll see. We're approaching some of my favorite holidays, and I'm so excited. But remember to always move with love. Remember that the love you spew, the people's will always have a perception of it. People will always have a perception of the love you spew, but do not allow it to take hold of you. All right? All right, I love you. Peace out. I finally try to find myself. I've been running from love, just trying to hide from all this pain I felt. Look, trying not to be the joke in the deck of whatever cards get dealt. They say a star still gotta let them align themselves.